Hello. I feel like I should maybe sit up here so people at the back can see, but then I'll just clearly fall backwards off this chair and die. So I'll just sit down here like a good girl. Sorry.
You can sit on your knees.
Yes.
Yeah, halfway.
That's a good idea.
Halfway. Okay.
Yes.
I actually wrote another introduction, so I'm going to introduce you again. Is that all right?
Hey, you've written that.
How much do we love her eyeshadow? Yeah. We love that eyeshadow.
It's from the MAC Drag Queen range. You can rain on this. You could probably spaff on my face and it would not move. It's sturdy stuff.
Second introduction. Here are a few things that you will learn in Caitlin Moran's best-selling book, How to Build a Girl. Number one, the difference between the rich and poor is that the rich are blithe. They believe that nothing could ever be so bad. Number two, the philosopher Paul Tillich said, there are three kinds of anxiety from which there is no escape. Fear of fate and death, fear of guilt and condemnation, and fear of living an empty life without direction or meaning. All of those can be overcome, as Caitlin explains, if you have money. Caitlin offers advice about how to deal with an unfeasibly large penis, because, as she says, the penis, it turns out, is a pretty straightforward, easy to understand mechanism. Moran is proud to stand on the achievements of angry women who ignited the feminist revolution. A longtime London Times columnist, she was named Columnist of the Year by the British Press Awards in 2010 and Critic and Interviewer of the Year in 2011. Her mega bestseller, How to Be a Woman, garnered her the 2011 Galaxy Book of the Year Award. She's the creator of the UK TV series Raised by Wolves and has been called the UK's answer to Tina Fey, Chelsea Handler, and Lena Dunham. Actually, Tina, Chelsea, and Lena are the US's answer to her. As Lena Dunham has said, and I agree, I have so much love for Caitlin Moran. Please welcome a woman of infinite wit and empathy. Let's welcome her again. Caitlin Moran!
What a beautiful intro. I have to say I felt very British as you were reading out that list of stuff that I've done. I was just thinking, that is too much now. I'm just kind of like, I am actually doing too much now. I feel like I'm greedily stealing people's time and attention, and I should just really dial it down for a couple of years. I feel very British. Sorry, I'm very sorry. I'm sorry to be here tonight, New York. I'm very sorry.
So, How to Build a Girl, to my mother and father, who thankfully are nothing like the parents in this book, and let me build my girl how I wanted. Lie number one.
Yeah. They tell you a whole load of legal stuff when you write a novel that's based on your life, and the first thing they always said is like, make it very, very clear that this is nothing like your life or your family, and nothing that happened in that book happened to you. So we had to write that bit in the front. It's pretty me, yeah.
I think so.
The analogy that I use though is like, it's like if you read about the writing of Little House on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. So Laura Ingalls Wilder was a pioneer girl. She went in that wagon with Ma and Pa. She went across those plains. But so many of the incidents that happened in those books didn't actually happen to her. They happened to other pioneer girls that she knew, which she aggregated and put into the fictionalized version of her childhood. And similarly with me in this book, I was a teenage music journalist who ran away down to London and had a lot of sex with a lot of rock stars. But a lot of the individual penises that happen in that book didn't happen to me. They happened to friends or family members. So, yeah.
Can we just talk about penises for a minute? One of my favorite subjects.
Aren't they smashing? I am really, really fond of them. They're really quite sweet.
Just back in the day.
Yeah. No. Well, I'm still I'm on very good terms with one of them now. That of my husband. But I have very, very fond memories of nearly all of the ones that I ever encountered. So there's something very hopeful about penis when you see it. And you're a woman around a straight man. Just kind of the way that it'll just sort of jump up like a puppy, like, oh, might something happen? Are you going to take me for a walk? Please stroke me. I want to be your friend. And then it does that thing where it kind of starts clawing up your leg a bit, and you're like, okay, I'm either going to play with the puppy or we need to put it outside. And that's the point where you make your choice at that time. But I was always very fond of them. Yes.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of common ground with penis discussion between the US and the UK. But what about some other subjects? What have you noted of late about the difference between the two cultures and what's kind of acceptable here versus what's acceptable there?
The thing is, oh God, this is going to get really heavy because, there are reasons why there are huge differences, but it's really heavy. But basically, you live on a terrible, horrible fault line of pus and fury. It's very clear in this country there are several things that haven't been addressed that are really key. That, you know, it's a continent based on genocide, and, you know, the racial problems in this country are completely fucking insane, and that there are centuries of discussion and reparation and apology and just acknowledgement to be made before we can go anywhere else. And this stuff sits underneath the culture like a huge lake of methane, and it seeps up like a gas, and that's why things ignite constantly, either in real life, you know, in shootings and death and brutality, you know, or on social media or the internet, where any discussion, you know, about race or background, you know, just ignite and become so furiously overheated that they become almost useless. Everything just gets squashed earth policy. And so we can see why all these, you know, why these things happen, why basically the conversation here is much more serious and becomes much more heated much more quickly than it does in the UK. You know, we did a whole heap of bad shit, but we were clever and evil enough to do it in other countries. We just went and killed people in other countries. It was never really on our doorstep. And, you know, so that, you know, it's a much more sort of, you know, there's a more playfulness in the UK, kind of, you know, this idea of kicking an idea around with no one getting hurt, I think is a lot more prevalent in the UK. There's an understanding that kind of, you know, when you're talking about things, no one's going to get hurt, no one's going to get injured. You're talking about futures, possible futures, and sort of, you know, talking around an idea. You don't need to commit to an idea. People are just trying out thoughts. So it's a lot more playful there. You know, and here things are a lot more serious, but I understand why. On the other hand, you also have far superior margaritas. The British idea of what a margarita is, I mean, I think we put lemons in ours. It's absolutely fucking insane. It's basically vodka with lemons in, and we're like, yeah, that's a margarita. You're like, no, I've been to America, they're definitely different there.
Now, How to Build a Girl, one of the most wonderful things about this is just the description of the mother and the father and what they deal with having no money and the whole welfare system and what it's like. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of enjoy how poor I was as a child, because, I mean, you know, especially my children now kind of, you know, have a much more privileged life, and I will tell them things like, I didn't used to have a bed. I would lie on a piece of foam rubber on the floor that I would share with another sibling, and a dog that was incontinent and would urinate on the bed, and then I would have to try and give the bed a blow dry with a hairdryer, and it would take so long that the engine would malfunction and set on fire. And they're just like, no one could ever have been that poor in this time. So yeah, so we were very poor, and we were raised on welfare. And I mean, I suspect you've got the same thing in this country that we have in ours, that there's a lot of denigration of people who are on welfare, this kind of idea that people are scroungers, that they're living off the state and stuff. And a lot of people will also go, well, why did your parents have 8 children when they couldn't support them when they were on welfare? And I replied to them, you know, I say to them, I replied to you now how I would have replied then, which is, I don't know. I wasn't in charge of my parents. I don't understand their decisions. What I do know is that our state and welfare system paid for there to be libraries so that I could go and educate myself. They paid for a health system that made sure that I was healthy. It gave me glasses, it gave me dentistry. It made sure that when any crimes happened to our family, that we were able to go and seek justice in the courts for free. We were represented for free by lawyers, by the state. And that now we've all grown up strong and healthy and educated and safe, that we have now all got jobs and paid back in taxes not only every single penny that was used to raise us, but we are now contributing positively to society. And that is the entire idea behind a welfare state, that you never visit the sins of the father on the children, that every generation is a new blank slate where you give those children the best opportunities in life. So yes, that was what it was like being raised on the welfares.
Your father, or the father, I should say, presenting his disability and
Yes.
what he had to go through. And you talk about your description of the civic center, the center of all begging, and the father character says it demeans a society to rely on random acts of mercy. You have such compassion and empathy for him, which I found so beautiful.
Yeah, well, my father, I mean, the father in the book is very much based on my father, and he grew up in a time before welfare in our country, and he was the youngest of 7 children. And the stories that he would tell of what the country was like before welfare were just terrifying. In order to assess whether you should be given payouts by the parish, before welfare, it was down to individual acts of mercy by the church or by individual benefactors, and they would divide people between the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. So you basically have to audition as a deserving poor person every week, and they would come around to your house and see what furniture you had, and if you had any furniture at all, you were told to sell it in order to buy food, and only when you had nothing in your house would you be given enough money to have food to feed your children. And so everybody who lived on the street had the same idea, which was that when you got the knock on the door from the man, you would immediately run into your front room, pick up the 3 or 4 chairs that you had, go out into the garden, pass it over the neighbour's fence, and they would store it in their house. And then the man would come in and go, you have no furniture, and they would give you money for bread. And then as soon as he'd gone, you'd get all your stuff back over the fence, and then you take your neighbour's furniture, so that when you went to the neighbour's house, they would have no furniture. So it's this, sort of, but the thing is, everyone games the system. This is the other thing that I find annoying when people go, people will, take advantage of welfare. They will game the system. Every system you're in, you game them. I'm now a member of the middle classes, and nearly everybody that I know has an accountant, and they will sit down and talk to their accountant about the best way that they can minimise their tax bill. And that's exactly the same thing. You're gaming a system again. Everybody will try and work anything for their own advantage. But the thing is that, white collar crimes are seen as, it's down to who does the crime rather than what the crime actually is. In our country, the amount of tax fraud that goes on, it dwarfs the amount of welfare fraud that goes on. I think the exact amounts is something like 0.01% of disability benefits are fraudulent claims. Whereas I can't even remember what the last bill was for people defrauding tax in the middle classes, but it was certainly much more than that. But if you're middle class, it's fine. If you're working class, they'll come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Now you talk about the rich being blithe,
yes.
And this idea that there's a lot of conversation in America about the 1% and the feeling of not really understanding the struggle.
Well, I don't know what's happened in your country, but our country, basically nearly all of our countries now have been bought up by either the Russians or the Chinese. That's kind of all the money's come in, and they bought all of London. And people abroad, because it's it's a fluctuating global market. Again, people are gaming a system. The stock markets are volatile because of mismanagement, so people want to invest in real estate. And London is seen as a very safe bet, but it now means that as I suspect you have here, it's impossible to buy property. Most people's houses in London earn more than they do. The average house in London appreciates by £30,000 to £40,000 a year, which is more than most people earn. So now, congratulations, you live in a world where your house is a better earner than you are. That is quite depressing for many people.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah. But for years being brought up as a working class girl, I was led to believe that the rich were terrible and that Conservatives, Tories, the right-wing party were scum. You would shout, Tory scum, whenever you saw anyone posh. And I still do when I'm drunk. But I've realised that's not useful because I've got to know posh people now. And for the first couple of years, I was quite Downton Abbey. I'm very much downstairs in Downton Abbey. So whenever I met someone posh, I would be like, "Thank you, sir. I'm a humble milkmaid. Thank you very much. Would sir like dinner in the front room?" But I've learned to talk to posh people now without automatically curtsying. And I've noticed that most of them are just really lovely. They're not bad people at all. They don't sit there going, I must smash the poor. I hate you. I'm here to destroy you. I think you are all feckers. They're not evil. They're just blithe. They have no idea what it is like to be poor. It's like the laguno fur that babies have when they're born, and that gets gradually rubbed off when you touch them. That's what it's like to be rich, to have never been scared, to have never been hungry, to have never feared that this month, by the month that you run out of money, you've got to go and sleep on someone else's couch. In the back of their head, I've genuinely had conversations with really lovely rich people who've sort of gone, when you're talking about what it's like to be poor, they would just go, but couldn't you just sell a second home? No. They'd be like, well, I can see that you'd have to cancel your holidays for maybe a year or two, tighten your belts. You're like, we've never been on holiday. That's just not happening. They'd be like, well, obviously you can't improve the house for a while. The house has never been improved. In fact, the house collapses more every year. If someone makes a hole in the door, we can't mend the hole in the door. If the car breaks down, there is no new car. You're gradually going backwards when you're poor. And this is the thing that the rich don't understand. It's just blitheness. They're not evil. They just don't have a fucking clue. And I also hate this kind of supposition that rich people are cleverer than poor people, which I think is really ingrained, particularly in our country because of the class system. Poor people are far cleverer than rich people. When I was poor, I lived in a poor house. If our toilet broke, my father would have to go to the library and get a book out and learn how to mend that toilet himself. Or if we needed to buy a new washing machine, we'd have to get the local newspaper and find out where someone was selling one second hand, and then work out how to go on a bus 30 miles and then get a washing machine on a bus and bring it back to our house and then plumb it in ourselves. Now, when I want to do a washing machine, I just go online and order one and it's delivered the next day. I so rarely have to think. Whereas, when you're poor, when you're working class and you're surviving, you're constantly having to work your way around. Your entire life, your brain, I'd love to see brain scans of poor people as opposed to rich people. Their brains are firing up all over the place. Rich people are just going, what lovely wine shall I have tonight? Although, let's be fair, that is always a difficult decision. That is one that constantly foxes me even still now.
All right, so you're a girl and you're trying to build yourself as a girl in this situation. How do you do it?
Well,
because you just want to go to London and be hot.
Yes, yeah, I very much just wanted to go to London and be hot. I mean, I can't really make any separation between the character in this book and me. It is very much me. So let's lose all pretense there. Well, the key thing was I've only ever had one real sort of moment of kind of, oh, you're quite clever in my life, which was realizing at the age of 13 or 14 that I was utterly self-loathing. I hated everything about myself. I was very poor. I was very fat. I was very ugly. The only thing you can do when you're poor and you can't afford makeup or nice clothes, I literally had one outfit, and when I was washing it, I would have to lie in bed until the dishwasher finished, until the washing machine finished. And so the only thing you can do when you're poor to make yourself pretty is to grow hair, because that's cheap, that's free. So I just grew my hair very, very long. I would eat an enormous amount of jam sandwiches, and I was basically a hair farmer for about 5 years. I just grew my hair very long, and that was my beautiful thing. So I was very self-loathing, and the only brilliant idea that I've ever had was one day to lie in bed and go, okay, if you hate yourself, what self would you love? What you would make you excited? You know, if you could build yourself now from scratch, what would you do? And that was easy because I just looked on my bedroom wall where I had everything that I loved. I think most teenagers have, this in their teenage years. Your bedroom wall is all the posters of your heroes and pages from books that with beautiful passages in, and poems that you love, and a beautiful leaf that you found, and a picture of a dress that you think someone might love you in if you could wear it. And you've got that all collaged on your wall. And what you do in your teenage years is taking the collage on the wall and putting that into your head and making that yourself. That's the blueprint for your future. That's what girls are doing, teenage girls and boys are doing on their bedroom walls. And so that was what I did. I took the top hat of Slash from Guns N' Roses and the eyeliner of Elizabeth Taylor and the saying of Dorothy Parker, "What fresh hell is this?" Which I used at all opportunities because I still hadn't really learned how to have conversations. But going, "What fresh hell is this?" will get you quite far. It makes you look quite wise. And then and I put on my Doc Martin boots and went down to London and had a lot of sex.
How was it?
Well, the thing is about sex in your teenage years. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to write about sex in this book is kind of one, I was infuriated by 50 Shades of Grey, and I was like, I am fucked if that is going to be like the primary example of how to have sex when you're a young girl. I'm going to write some proper sex.
And cystitis.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Hello.
And it's also this understanding that kind of like most of the sex that you're going to have, and if anybody is of this age and they didn't know this yet, I'm really sorry to drop this truth bomb on you. Most of the sex that you have in your teenage years and your early 20s will be terrible. But it's coming to the understanding that life always divides into two categories. Thus, one, amazing experiences, things that are amazing at the time, and then two, experiences that are terrible at the time, but which will later make future amazing anecdotes when you're in a bar with some friends. And that is what 90% of the sex that you will have in your teens and early 20s will be. At the time, you're like, in my eye, this hurts, this is wrong, what are you doing? 5 years later, in a bar with your friends, lying on the floor with wine coming out your nose, going, and then he did this, and then he did that. Oh my God. And so this is the understanding of, once you have that in your heart, you can't go wrong. Particularly as a teenage girl, anything that goes wrong to you, you're like, okay, this is a bad experience now, but later, this is going to make a future amazing anecdote. And once you know that, nothing really that bad can happen to you. Unless you cut a fringe that you later regret. That is, because those fuckers take much longer than you would ever think to grow out. They are bad.
But there's a lot of info about blowjobs and...
Well, yes. Well, I want it to be. I'm going to lead it. Shall I lead it to a reading? Are you queuing? Are you queuing in a big penis here?
This might be a good time.
Yeah. So I'm going
Why don't we do a little reading?
I will do a little reading. Because I wanted. Because I learned about sex wholly from books because there was no internet in 1986. So the only sex that you get was stuff that you could read about in books. And I was always very interested in because I didn't go to school, I was home educated, and so everything that I know was from my local library. And I very quickly worked out what the important books were and the useful books. And if any writer worth their salt should put their entire life's experiences into that book, so that when you read it, you then have their life experiences and your life experiences. And then when you read a third book that's good, you've got two authors' life experiences and your life experiences. So gradually you can end up having lived 1,000 lives if you've read 1,000 really good books. And so I wanted to write books that put everything that I knew into them, which is why I ended up writing a chapter about having sex with someone with a very large penis. So in the book, Johanna has lost her virginity and has then decided that she's decided to reclaim the word slag. And she decided that would take too long, and so she's simply invented 2 new words instead. One of which is Lady Sex Pirate, and the other one which is swashbuckler. And with these 2 words in her mind, she is now shagging her way around London. And so this intense training season of casual sex reached its peak with Big Cock Al. I hope you notice what I've done there with the name. In Dickens often names his characters kind of in such a way as you can guess something about their personalities. Scrooge. Big Cock Al. I'm wearing only a dark blue nylon petticoat and Al is down to his trousers. I've just unzipped the fly and released the biggest penis I have ever seen. It takes 2 hands to get it out of his pants. I feel like a snake handler. It is alarmingly huge. In my startlement, I believe that I hear it go thump when it comes out. The last time I saw something like this, it was at my dead fat Nana's house, across the bottom of the front door as a draft excluder, with 2 buttons for eyes. There were boys I went to school with who had legs shorter than this. Blimey, I say, agitated into speaking like a Cockney chimney sweep, who has spotted a silver sixpence. I know, Al says. Now, everything I have ever read up until this point has led me to unquestioningly believe that the more penis, the better. Jilly Cooper in her novels has been very literally firm on this issue, that men's cocks are basically like buffets at parties. There's simply no such thing as too much. Whatever you can't handle that night in the heat of the party can simply be cling filmed and had for breakfast the next day as a treat. That, I say, in a very friendly voice, is a very large penis. Yes, Al says quite urgently. Suck it. Make it bigger. Well, I will do no such thing. You joker, I am not a lunatic. But what am I going to do? This is quite the dilemma, because if I continue touching this cock, it will, as I have just been fairly warned, although it seems frankly impossible, get even bigger. If I try and fuck it, it's just going to go straight through me and come out of the top of my head, like the steak on a scarecrow. What I really need is for Al to offer to go down on me, because that's the kind of sex we can have without it killing me. But it appears not to have occurred to him that this is possible, and my understanding about men eating women out is that it's like the rules of the Prime Directive in Star Trek. You know, where the crew of the Enterprise are forbidden from telling other, more primitive cultures about astonishing and enjoyable technological advances on other planets. We end up having sex, of course, because you must never look a gift hose in the mouth. While I'm having the sex, I find time to compile in my head a little list of hints and tips for a future putative help sheet, which would be entitled, Ladies, How You Too Can Deal with an Unfeasibly Large Penis, by a friend. Tip number 1. When in the missionary position, place your palms flat on his chest and brace, 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 brace with your arms. This will limit the thrust depth. It will also, pleasingly, push your tits together, so it's kind of a good tip for looking hot and taking selfies. Tip number 2. In dogging, you can subtly but essentially keep crawling away from the penis. Making it impossible to get more than the first 5 inches inside. During our 10-minute session, I managed to make a whole circuit of the bed on all fours, as Al ardently pursues me kneeling. A speeded-up film of this would make Al look like Lawrence of Arabia, very slowly riding his camel, me, around a putative bed-sit fuckarina. And tip number 3, of course, is to warn you about cystitis. Bravo!
Teenage daughters read the book?
There are three groups of people who I know will never read my books. I'm always surprised to find out, sort of like very young women read them, and men read them, kind of, sort of like, 70-year-old women have come down and asked me to sign their breasts at signings. The only people I know without a shadow of a doubt will never read my books are A, my parents, B, my siblings, and C, my children. Because those are three groups of people who don't want to read my masturbatory memoirs. They are absolutely
off limits.
The point where it turns to your vagina, we, your family, will now back out. And which I say to my children, well, you weren't saying that 13 years ago. You were very much using my vagina. I remember that might be very, very painful indeed. But now they've used it, they don't want to know anything more about it.
Your character says, away from my genitals, I also wish to be noble, profoundly noble. I wish to devote myself to a cause.
Yes. Well, I think that's really important. Like, you're never more, you're at your sanest and your most good, as a child into your early teenage years. And then another thing that I really wanted to write about in the book was cynicism. Like, you want to be so good as a child, and you see the world, and you're very focused on how the world is fair and not fair. You tend to want to, you sympathise with people who are having terrible times. You want to change the world. And I've noticed it particularly in recent years, on social media and Twitter, the default tone for so many young people is cynicism. And the reason you become cynical is because you're scared. You're scared of your innocence, you're scared of people taking advantage of your innocence, you don't want to believe in something and then be proven to have believed in the wrong thing. And so you construct cynicism around you like armour. But the problem is with armour that although it initially protects you, you cannot grow in armour and you cannot dance in armour. And it's the worst possible thing for a young person to make. You absolutely stunt your future. And this is something that I see particularly on social media, and one of the reasons why I wanted to write the novel was I was in a very rare position at the age of 16 in that I could talk to a national audience. I was a published journalist and I was, talking to an audience, and I went, as Johanna does in the book, through a period of immense cynicism where my tone became horrible. I became a really nasty person. I didn't believe in anything. I thought I was protecting culture by slagging off bands and, wishing death on pop stars and just being really vile to people and constantly being angry and thinking I was about to be screwed over by culture. And I went through this whole process of realising that, I was raging against, my culture, my generation, my future, that wishing death on bands and getting this wound up about stuff was completely counterintuitive. And so I came out the other side and stopped being a cunt. And so that was why I wanted Johanna to go on that journey, because now anybody can talk to a national audience, anyone can blog, anyone can tweet, just, your Facebook updates. And I think as young people feel very exposed, they do tend to put on this carapace of armour, as I did. And I think just knowing that it's something you need to grow out of as quickly as possible, because it does you no good at all, was one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book.
So, I know you're passionate about feminism and social justice.
You know what, I've gone off it recently. I like to doing all right,
Okay. But as a writer, I think you've realized that you can and have accomplished a lot more with a joke than with a rant.
Yes. Well, there's several things that I've noticed, like kind of, I like to study how things get done and how things change, and I'm very interested in cultural change. And there were things like noticing that, two of my biggest heroes, George Orwell and Charles Dickens, and they both started off as polemic journalists talking about social issues. And then there's only so many people who are going to read sort of serious polemic about something. Then you need to start telling stories and coming up with characters, because that's how we understand things better as humans. That's sort of how how we're programmed to understand stories. And also, it's just more fun. I really dislike this thing that's happened in the last 30 years that's sort of like talking about social change and revolution and equality and stuff. People are like, it's a bit wordy and a bit boring and a bit fibrey. You're like, no, that's amazing. Like the whole point of these things, where we make the world a better place, then we, when people stop having to deal with the bullshit of waking up in the morning and feeling scared about walking down the street because of the colour of the skin, and because who they're holding hands with, or because of their accent or their class or where they came from or what they do or their gender. When people stop wasting all their lives being scared about these things, then we finally get to do the thing that human beings were put on this earth to do, which is to be joyful. This is an incredible world. Just stand in the rain for 5 minutes. Actually, the rain's probably not a good example, but stand in the sun for 5 minutes and see what a beautiful world this is. Kind of like, sometimes we'll just like bite into a cherry and go, this is so intensely red and so intensely sweet, and I can't believe the world makes things that grow on trees that taste incredible. I'm an old hippie. And this is what we're here to do, is to be joyful, and that is the point of these things, to enjoy our lives, because it's all over like that. I'm very aware of my mortality, not least because I smoked about 30 cigarettes today, and I'm just very focused on us having a better time than we're having now.
I thought we could open it up to some questions.
Q&A.
Q&A. So I'm going to stand up so I can actually see people. Any questions?
And while no one's asking questions, I sing. And I sing until someone asks a question. And the song I'll be singing is Wuthering Heights. No, that was a bit rude. Because it is actually quite a mellifluous voice. And it has charmed many. As you know, the last time I sang Wuthering Heights, I'm going to name drop here. I went to do karaoke with Tracy Thorne from the band Everything But the Girl. And we went to karaoke place, and all night, every time she tried to get the microphone, I go, "No, Tracy, I think I could just help you there." And I didn't let her sing all night, and I did Wuthering Heights 3 times. And as I left the karaoke place, where they have 50 booths, and this is all they do karaoke, the staff pointed at me and went, "Yeah, she was the one." Like my singing above everybody else's have been so terrible, the staff have been talking about it afterwards. So,
what's your question?
I'm going to dedicate this song to you.
Well, I was going to ask you to duet on Wuthering Heights. But no, actually, I wanted to know if that's a David Bowie shirt.
Yes! Oh my god! I'm going to stand up so everyone can see the majesty of this. This is a shirt that is covered with hundreds of David Bowies. Yes! Let's applaud the majesty of this shirt. It's just so incredible. And everyone I show it to just has a bit of a tear in their eye. Because they should. There's the great thing about David Bowie, much as I love the Beatles and how I understand the world a lot, David Bowie did everything the Beatles did, but on his own and ginger, and at the time gay. With bulk eyes and snaggle teeth. He was just absolutely incredible. So, yeah, I got David my tits, man. Was that the question? Yeah, it was the best question I've literally ever been asked.
This is really short, but it's something you mentioned in both books. What's the story about the headless fox statue?
Oh,
I just wanted to know.
No, this was something my dad actually did, so yeah, no, I have used that material twice. Shit. Okay. There is an argument to say that many of the things that I write appear to be the same. That's kind of like 2 books now about a fat teenage girl who's working class and who wants to have a lot of sex, and then the TV show that I do in the UK is about a fat working class teenage girl who really wants to have a lot of sex, and we're now turning How to Build a Girl into a film, and that will be a film about a fat working class girl who wants to have a lot of sex. And you might start to see a slightly repetitive kind of theme there, but it's actually completely fucking deliberate. This is a Woody Allen deal. He always makes films about neurotic New York Jewish men who go on about sex. I'm the same with fat working class teenage girls. This is what I'm going to be doing this for the next 20 years. There's another 2 books after this. This is the first of a trilogy. And then after that, the book after that is set in the 8th century in Scotland. And that is also about a fat working class teenage girl who's obsessed with sex. This is it forever. This is all I do. So I meant to use that material twice. So the headless concrete fox, yeah, no, my dad was, as Irish dads tend to be, an inveterate pisshead and bullshitter. And he would often go and spend all of our money in the pub, and then to make up for it to our mother, would just steal something and bring it back. On one occasion, it was literally the sink from the urinals, which he somehow managed to wrest, and just brought it back to her and she went, "Why have you got me that?" He went, "Oh, there's some good memories there." Not for the woman that had never been in the men's, no. And one time he managed to come back and crashed our car and went, "It's okay, look what I got you." And it was a concrete statue of a fox, but which didn't have a head. And that was his beautiful romantic gift to say sorry to my mother. I think presumably the gift was so ill received that she then had to get her pregnant again in order to say sorry. She seemed to enjoy being pregnant. She did it quite a lot. I was saying in an interview earlier, one of the weird things about being the oldest of 8 children is that you tend to have heard the next 7 siblings down being conceived if you live in a house that's got quite thin walls. So.
Any more questions?
Hurry, because I'm going to start singing Wuthering Heights again. I am with me.
I'll get started.
Sorry, yeah. Someone liked it. Or was that the clapping stop? Was that the clap of no? Was that the clap of end?
Since you've become sort of this feminist icon for so many of us, coming up kind of in a vacuum of really cool feminist, funny icons, do you feel like the weight of that? Do you feel that as something that you're conscious of in your daily life or in what you write? Or are you just like going on about your life? Like we're not here.
Well, the thing I really enjoyed, like when I first started getting some of the famous, was I noticed that many women, when they sold a million books, and at that point, kind of people go sort of like, you know, you have power. And they would go, me? Not me. No, I'm a woman. I just fall over. No. Please don't give me power. It makes me look fat. And I very much no, give me all the power. I don't care how fat it makes me. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. I've got 2 children. You know, I'm happy to stand up and go, yeah, I'll take some responsibility. I'll make some massive fucking mistakes, but I'll apologise for them and learn from them, and I'll move on. But I love the fact that, you know, there's you know, an overweight mother or two with a massive cesarean section who's talking about, you know, feminism and Marxism and equality, and you know, and forming new political parties and stuff. And you know, in the UK, you know, I get teenage girls screaming at me like I was in One Direction. A lot of it is the word no, no when I'm singing Wuthering Heights, but occasionally it's slightly more positive than that. The thing, I'm going to do because we're probably running out of time, aren't we? There's one story that I want to tell, because I've put a special thing on to tell this story. About the journey that I've been on in my life. So from being a very self-loathing kind of like 13 or 14-year-old, to the point now where I just think I'm pretty fucking smashing. I don't say that in a self-aggrandizing way, but it's just kind of, yeah, you know, because again, women are told that you can never love yourself. I think I'm all right. I'm quite hygienic. My eyes point in the right direction. I don't ask any more of me than that. My standards are thrillingly low for me. So yeah, so self-loathing. And when I was a teenage girl, there was one big fantasy I had, which was that I would be involved in a massive car crash that wouldn't kill me, but would be extreme enough for my body to be completely rebuilt by medical science, taking about 5 stone off and making my tits the same size and pointing in the right direction. And that's not a great thing, you know, the dream for a teenager to have. So I went through all my life and I've learned all my mistakes and sort of, you know, and I've learned to accept myself. I built the me that I thought I would get on with, and I've done that. And then when How to Be a Woman came out, I went into a meeting with my publishers and they said, have you got an idea of what the cover should be? And I went, actually, yes, I have. And they weren't expecting me to say that, and they looked scared. And I said, I've got this idea. It's this thing called my feminist smile. And they said, what's that? And I said, well, the idea is that I would draw 2 eyes. And then I would draw a nose here, like this. And then I would flap my belly fat out and manipulate it into a big smiley face, like this. We might just go for a head and shoulders shot instead. But the key thing about that, when I do stand-up tours in the UK, and I don't do that bit towards the end, and then I sort of meet out these big signings that go on for 3 or 4 hours afterwards, and I meet all these women kind of in tears going, I felt really tearful when you did that. And I'm like, yeah, sorry about that. And they go, no, because I've just realised that any other time I've seen a stomach like that, it's on a tabloid website or newspaper with a big circle of shame around it, with she hasn't lost the baby weight yet. And she's like, it's the first time I've ever seen a woman manipulating her belly and smiling, going, my life is fantastic, I'm really quite happy. She's like, and then we put our bellies together and we rub them together like, it's enormously bonding and relieving. So my tits are still out, aren't they? I've not pulled it down. Hang on. So yeah, that's my tits. Sorry.
On behalf of Strand, thank you so much, Caitlin and Judith, for joining us tonight. Keep it going for them.